Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Silicon Valley is just hours away now, and I'm here in Fremont, California, joined by Vinod Dham, known as the father of the Pentium chip. Also joining us here on the program, Professor Vivek Vadva of Stanford University, who's done extensive studies to how Indians here in Silicon Valley work and the kind of work that they do. And joining us again on NDTV today is Panch Chandrasekharan. We had profiled him in a story this morning on how he left his high-paying job and decided to start his own startup. But let me ask Mr. Dham first. Vinod Dham, a lot of anticipation and excitement here ahead of the Prime Minister's visit. What are you expecting and looking forward to?
What I'm expecting is that this visit culminates eventually in a set of things that he will implement when he goes back to India. And those things have to do with proliferating innovation, which is what Silicon Valley is all about, and making sure that we bring that spirit into India, both from an entrepreneurial point of view, venture capital, as well as from a government play, not only in terms of policies and regulations for taxes to make it easier for people to invest, but also to create a mindset in our universities and research institutions and R&Ds of creativity and innovation.
And do you believe, therefore, that India is ready for that? Because, or do you think that there's still a long way to go to create that environment?
I think India is in a perfect place for that. There's a perfect storm brewing at this moment. It's come about from the two factors. One is Mark Andreessen said a few years ago that software is eating the world. And I think India is eating software. So clearly, India, software, and the world are intertwined in that manner. So I think it's just a perfect opportunity, and also very much needed, because India so far has really bloomed, or I would say moderately progressed, from two factors. Public sector, which kind of did okay initially, but not doing so great. And then private sector, which did very well, but really does not want to take risk. It's been financed by subsidies and incentives from the government. It's a license Raj. And they will not create the entrepreneurship of creating the next Google or the next Facebook. It will come from youngsters who will create those next 10 big companies in India.
But in order to be able to do that, Professor Vadva, you also need to, the government needs to be enabled to create that environment within India so that companies do take the risk that you're talking about. And one of the things we've consistently seen in the last few days that we have been here and people that we've talked to is that they feel the processes in India are very cumbersome, the tax structure is very complicated, and it just doesn't create the feasible enough environment. So, as Vinod Dham said, he wants to see this trip where the Prime Minister goes back and is able to implement things that he promises. Isn't that then the key? More to go beyond making those promises.
You know, what government needs to do is to get out of the way of entrepreneurs, get rid of all of these ridiculous regulations, stop messing up and having these demands that people, store their SMSs for 90 days, stop doing dumb things, educate the populace, build the infrastructure, provide internet connectivity, fix the problems of corruption. If the government does those and leaves India's entrepreneurs alone, the country will rule the world in technology, and it'll reinvent itself many times over. Government needs to get out of the way, and that's what I hope Modi learns while he's over here, that the government doesn't operate here. The government doesn't, you don't even see government over here. And we hate government in Silicon Valley. Basically, the mantra over here is, leave us alone. We can innovate if you get out of our way.
But in a country like India, you also need the government to be able to create an enabling environment. It's a complicated country. So
fix the infrastructure, provide the internet connectivity, don't put all these unnecessary hurdles on business, and entrepreneurs will bloom. Especially Indian entrepreneurs, they're very resourceful. They know how to work around governments. Let government get out of the way, and India will flourish.
You think there's still too much red tape in India right now?
Far too much. That's the biggest problem that entrepreneurs have, is the red tape and corruption in India, and then the lack of infrastructure. If the government can do its job and get out of the way, India's entrepreneurs will fix the problems.
Vinod Dham, would you agree with that in terms of red tape and the obstacles?
Yes, no, actually I would somewhat be less critical than he is, only because we have funded more than 24 companies. I have a venture capital fund in India. I went there in 2005. And I have to tell you that we did not have to give bribe to a single person in a single company to get anything done. So we didn't see corruption. That doesn't mean that there's no corruption. Don't take me wrong.
Your experience
but
was different.
Our experience as entrepreneurs.
Everyone else experiences it over there. And this is the biggest complaint you hear is about all the government obstacles.
No, so obstacles are there. So there's a difference. So corruption I didn't see. The obstacles are, for example...
This was in 2005.
2005 is when we started our fund. And prior to that, I had an incubator, out of which there's still 2 companies which were sold. The US companies are gone. The Indian subsidiaries were shut down. And the shells are still existing because the bureaucrats are not allowing us to wrap up those companies because the labor laws are so strict in India that you can't bankrupt a company. You can't say, I'm shutting it down, and there's just too much questioning for too long that really is cumbersome in some ways.
Yeah.
And second thing is, the tax laws need to be very predictable. As venture capitalists, what we do is we take money from our LPs, called limited partners, pension funds, endowments, and we are investing that money in India. They need to be assured not only that the money will return to them with the risk they're taking with us, but the tax laws will be predictable. The government of India, in the previous government, they had this Vodafone affair where they started retroactively wanting to tax since 1956, for God's sake. This government also came pretty close recently and then backed off in creating a new paradigm of what they call alternative minimum tax.
Yeah.
And we cannot deal with that. Please give us whatever your rules are, put them out and be transparent and just stick with them. Don't keep on changing.
But be consistent with them.
Exactly.
Panch, as a young entrepreneur here in Silicon Valley, what are the expectations you have? Do you think that India has the potential to create an environment like this back home? In a sense, Bangalore is kind of there, but not exactly.
Yeah, I can tell you from my personal experience with dealing with entrepreneurs in India, and some of my friends have gone back to start companies there. The talent pool that we find in India is phenomenal. I mean, they tend to congregate in a few places like you find it in Silicon Valley, but the talent pool is amazing. What we need there a little bit more is the mindset towards not just repeating the business models that have worked in the Silicon Valley and kind of like cater it to the Indian market, which is fine. For a growing market, that's great. But products, the product mentality has to start there. And Vinod mentioned incubators there. So we have like good incubators in IITs and IIMs. And where the government can help also is to expand that ecosystem and help the ecosystem grow as incubators or in other ways in other colleges too. Start them young while they're still in college.
Can I build on that for a second? I think this was absolutely a fantastic point. If you study how this country became the greatest country in terms of innovation, what you will find is that all of the innovation here has actually come from a government-funded research, from defense. Internet was born from DARPA. And where are they funding this research? In universities. They're giving small amount of money to professors and letting them, the students, do the research and come with that mindset, the creativity, the independence, the intellectual property aspect of it. This is what India needs to do. We have what we call CSIR and NP, National Physical Laboratories and all that. I haven't really seen much coming out of them. And then we really are quite dismayed that IITs never get mentioned in the top 100 institutes in the world, even though all the IITs are running
Yeah, that's
Silicon
true,
Valley.
actually. Yeah.
The reason is, if you go back to these institutes, there's no research going on worth anything. And the research is very important element of a professor.
Yeah, actually, Professor Wadhwa can tell us about that in more detail. I mean, isn't that a big sort of a gap in terms of our sort of creating that environment?
What Vinod said was right. As recently as 5 years ago, the world has changed now. Already now, India is going to become the largest growth market for internet usage in the world. Already it is. 140 million smartphones added last year. Over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, there are going to be 500 million people coming online. The cost of developing technologies has dropped exponentially. Yes, research is good, but today you don't need research anymore. You need implementation. Entrepreneurs can start building world-changing inventions out of India, out of the labs over there, the incubators over there, or from their own homes. This is how much the world has changed.
So you don't think that research is the key to that?
Not anymore. I mean, I love Vinod. He's my close friend.
I'm so glad you disagree.
I disagree with Vivek because, what's happened is we've had such great success in software service sector, IT service sector for last decade, where we built from 15 billion revenue to 150 billion revenue, 10x. Amazing. But you know what it also created as a byproduct? Set of people who are used to being told what to do. And that is not a mindset that's required for an entrepreneur, for innovation.
Yeah.
And that's what we need
Where
to
you take the
change.
lead. Yeah.
Yes, and it needs to be changed. I agree with him fundamentally at the college, university level itself.
Yeah, Panch wants to comment on that. And Panch, just, since you mentioned that there are friends of yours that have gone back to India, would you do that? I mean, you took a leap of faith. Yeah. You quit your nice, comfortable job and decided, I'm going to, start a startup. So did your family firstly freak out and say, are you crazy? I mean, did that happen? Because I'm sure a lot of Indian families wouldn't react very well to that.
The cultural element of that is always there, right? Yeah. So, but that's what being in Silicon Valley for so many years, it changes your mindset a little bit. And we do find that mindset in India today, for sure. I mean, I was trying to hire a few people out of India and they had to worry about, hey, what's my uncle going to think? Are you going to work for a Google or at least an Infosys type of thing, right?
Not only that, the marriageability of a person gets affected. I had one person I had to argue out because he would not join us in a startup. And when I finally talked to him, I said, what's the matter? And he said, I'm getting married and my in-laws knows that I'm working at Intel, I have a job. But if I come to your company, ABC, who knows about it?
Oh my God.
I swear to God, I'm not kidding. This was a real issue.
You want to elaborate on this cultural aspect of it,
Yes, these are personal experiences. Like, obviously, Vin has been through that too. But I do want to. I don't want to make it into a negative story, right? But what we do see is a bunch of angel networks sprouting up in different cities in India, Bangalore, Mumbai, Chennai, and all that. And I was talking to a few angels there, and their statement was, "Oh my God, the kids that were born after 1990." It's a whole different mindset. They don't think like some of us older people do, right? So there is a change in mindset, but I think India still has a long way to go in terms of, hey, what's going to happen if I don't have a salary for some time? Will I sacrifice my regular paying job to go do something new and innovative? You have to start thinking more than, hey, I do this service for somebody else who already has a strategy. Or am I going to contribute? These kind of changes need to happen.
But it's changing. There's a data in Economics Times recently that 30% of the kids who are graduating from IITs and IMMs are going to startups now, rather than going to established companies, which is really a significant change.
And perhaps their marriage prospects are not affected by that. But I'll give the last word to Professor Wadhwa then. In terms of their expectations, are you skeptical or hopeful?
Well, right now, the PM's visit is more publicity and showing that India can do it. The opportunities are unbelievable in India. India is going to have the ability to solve not only its problems, but the world's problems. Yes, Indian entrepreneurs were hesitant before, but they're changing. If you look at the new generation, no one wants to work for Infosys or TCSs anymore. Forget it. And not even Microsoft or IBM. They want to start companies right now. They want to do what Kunal Bahal did. They want to do what InMobi is doing. They want to be a Flipkart. They want to build world-changing companies. And the opportunities are right now to solve infrastructure problems, agriculture, manufacturing, using robotics, automation, AI, all of these advancing technologies to solve India's problems. All they have to do is go online and start learning about the advances in technology and then applying them back home. And they can build world-changing inventions out of India. I'm extremely optimistic about India. I see India solving not only its problems, but the world's problems over the next 5 or 10 years.
As long as the government gets out of it eventually.
Get the government out of the way and everyone will be happy.
All right. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. That's all we have from Silicon Valley today, but we will be covering the Prime Minister's visit closely. It begins on Saturday here in California and then culminates with a big speech that he is making to the Indian community on Sunday night. Of course, also a town hall with Mark Zuckerberg on Sunday morning here in California.